Death Note is a fun series. It starts off great, it's nicely paced, it's got a lot of cool moments, and it's an incredibly addictive read or watch. Death Note is popular, in no small part, because of the story's unique premise and the cat and mouse dynamic between the protagonist criminal and antagonist detective. Lots of folks love it, hell, even I love it, but it's drawn about as much criticism as it has praise, even from its biggest fans, and I personally have some mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, it rocks. On the other hand, it's also edgy shitlord trash with a dash of misogyny, and the plot gets ridiculously bloated out of a contractual need to continue on for blah chapters and episodes, and the moral questions it's entertaining aren't quite so deep as people want to think, and it kinda sucks. But on the other hand, it kinda rocks. Big Joel made a pretty good video outlining the appeal of Death Note and how, in his opinion, it went off the rails, and I think I mostly agree. I made a comment on that video, which basically sums up as, if you look at Death Note's second part as a second season, it works much better. That's my opinion. But yeah. One thing that sticks out to me, however, is something that he says partway through the video.
The best parts of Death Note are so great, so precise and clever and grounded. It just scratches this very particular itch that makes it feel like if I want to see something like Death Note, I just have to watch Death Note again.
And Big Joel, if you, by some twist of fate, are now watching my video for some reason, well, I guess I've got some anime recommendations for you. Because Death Note has, as of the fall 2020 anime season, received a sequel. No, not a sequel, 2 sequels. And I, for everyone's benefit, and my own, am going to explore both of them in mild detail, and then strongly recommend that you watch them before I, at some point in the future, cover them in more detail in one or a couple of my signature hour-long epics, bookended by some of those cool AMVs I like to do. So, let's get started. In case you've forgotten, or have never seen it, Death Note is the story of a dude called Light who gets a notebook called Death from a Shinigami called Ryuk. From there, he decides to become a tyrannical manipulator who's dedicated himself to either killing people or gaslighting and fucking with people before killing those people or other relevant people to fuck with those people more and convince his cult of followers that he is an all-powerful god with an infallible plan. Kind of like the QAnon people. To explain how the two shows I'm going to recommend are like Death Note, we need to first explain and define to some degree what Death Note is. So, what is Death Note? Well, that question has a pretty simple answer, actually. Death Note, as it happens, is a murder mystery detective story about a detective pursuing a criminal while trying to solve the mystery of how the crime was done, except told from the perspective of the criminal as the murder is being done, rather than the detective trying to unravel the crime after the fact. The name I've conceived for this subgenre is reverse murder mystery. Wikipedia calls it an inverted detective story or how catch 'em, which I suppose are both as good as the name I came up with. In any case, let's just talk for a moment about how Death Note fits into this category. Obviously, Death Note starts with Light, the murderer, deciding to use the Death Note, the notebook that can kill anyone whose name gets written down in it, to do a mass murder of all of the world's criminals to ostensibly cleanse the world of evil. The story soon introduces L, the detective who's taken it upon himself to prove Light's guilt, and with his introduction, Light must shift his focus to using the Death Note in creative ways to kill numerous other people off in ways that either confuse confuse his pursuers or divert suspicion from him. The audience is shown the limits of the Death Note, the conditions of Light's predicament, and what both Light and his pursuers know, and then given an opportunity to speculate on how he will use the tools available to him to kill his target and or cleverly escape capture. This is similar to how in a standard detective story, we are shown evidence, clues, details of suspect alibis, etc., and then left with the chance to guess for ourselves what the answer is, before the detective reveals the answer to us and explains how they arrived at their conclusions. Death Note's roots in the crime mystery genre make a lot of sense, especially when you consider that Death Note's authors have said that L was inspired by Sherlock Holmes, or at least I think this was said somewhere. I can't actually find a quote, but Sherlock Holmes is such an influential character in mystery fiction and fiction in general that I find that hard to disbelieve. So it stands to reason, thusly, that Light would have to be Moriarty, and so a natural step in the evolution of this subgenre would be for someone to write a story about Moriarty being the criminal protagonist. Hence... Moriarty the Patriot is this prequel spin-off thing wherein Moriarty, the famous Lord of Crime and nemesis of Sherlock Holmes, is busily waging the class war. That's not hyperbole, and I don't mean that in a wishy-washy, interpretive-based Madoka Magica is an allegory for the gig economy about magical girls fighting the class war kind of way, although I am completely correct in saying that that is what Madoka is about, and no one has proven me wrong yet. This is of course a joke. But anyway, no, this series is just unambiguously about class war, and they say that out loud from the start. Moriarty the Patriot follows William James Moriarty, who by day is an affluent math teacher at a university, and by night helps poor people with their problems, which in this particular case means advising them as a so-called crime consultant on how to take sweet revenge on the rich motherfuckers who've wronged them. So this is just better than Death Note by default. In Death Note, the people Light kills are just criminals, apparently, and the closest thing Light has to a definition of criminal is people who've been arrested for a crime, people who've evaded arrest for a crime, and people who oppose him. In other words, Light is a cop.
It literally just didn't occur to me that there might be socioeconomic reasons as to why a lot of people are forced into committing crimes. It literally just never crossed my mind.
It's acknowledged at least a few times that many of the people Light killed were just people waiting in prison who hadn't yet been convicted and given a sentence, who might have been arrested wrongly, or perhaps even about to be let out. Light has no coherent moral compass other than crime bad, and at no point does the story introduce any nuance or clarify what should or should not be a crime, other than perhaps murder and sexual assault. But most of the real-life prison population are not in prison for murder and sexual assault, and crimes, as defined by the law, are not always immoral. The nobility, however, are absolutely guilty of a wealth of patently inhumane and immoral crimes, including murder and assault and murder by inaction and a slow, perpetual genocide of the lower classes through unchecked poverty and illness. Every aristocrat who falls prey to one of Moriarty's clients has done an unambiguously evil thing, and this is correctly framed as justice being delivered where it would otherwise be impossible. If you're a regular viewer of my channel and find yourself agreeing with most of my steaming hot takes, I don't know what else I need to say to you to convince you to watch this show. It recommends itself. I will say, however, that the story takes a few minutes to get going. It starts in medias res, with Moriarty solving the mystery of the murder of a tailor's son, and then, helping the tailor out. and then flashes back for 2 episodes to show us how the gifted child Moriarty got his start as a crime lord before hopping back ahead in time again to really get good. The 4th and 5th episodes are the best of the anime so far, in my opinion. This interpretation of Moriarty is very well characterized, as are his 2 brothers and all of the one-off characters who need crime consulting throughout the episodes. And the series in general is a far fresher and more interesting take on the Conan Doyle canon than What If Sherlock, but in the modern day, or the future, or in space, or a kid, or an anime girl. While I've heard of some complaints of historical inaccuracy about the time period, and I can't speak to how closely these interpretations of these characters align with their Doylist counterparts, I'll say they're all cool to get to know and really good looking, and Sherlock himself, who only showed up just recently in the 6th episode, looks to be a very promising antagonist. And he's also pretty handsome. Like, look, hot blue-haired anime Sherlock. I don't know how you turn down hot anime boy Sherlock. He's just great. I'm very eager to read the manga, and once I do, I'll hopefully have more to say about the series and get around to saying it in another video before the anime's 2nd core premieres in April, but suffice it to say, this show is amazing, and I'm very eager to see where it goes from here. But if you're still not convinced, well, skip to this timestamp to avoid episode 4 spoilers. Okay, so in the 4th episode, there's this nobleman with a bad heart who needs to take medicine in order to avoid having a heart attack, and there's a gardener and his wife who want to kill him because he refused to allow his doctor to treat their dying child, and the gardener's wife still hasn't gotten over it. So here's how they do it. The gardener and his wife, at Moriarty's proposal, make him some delicious grapefruit jam, which lowers the effectiveness of his medication, and then promptly causes him to die of a heart attack. And as he does so, Moriarty delivers his signature badass boast.
これは罰なんです。クライムコンサルタントであるこのジェームズ・モリアーティがあなたに下す。
Let me just repeat that. They do a murder with jam. Jam. This is both a realistic solution based in real-life science, although obviously I strongly advise against trying it, and a novel one. They offed this aristocrat fucker with jam. That by itself is just great. Okay, spoilers over. One thing you might have noticed is that Moriarty is grounded in the real world, like the real 19th century, where real things happen, or are supposed to. This sets a not insignificant contrast between it and Death Note, which was decidedly more fantastic in its choice of plot device. But despite the fantastic premise, the story stays firmly grounded in reality. Apart from the Death Note, Light has no fantastic tools to avail himself of. He has only his wits, the fallacies of humankind, and all the technological advancement you could get in 2004. Because of this, the story gives the impression that if a Death Note fell from the sky in our world, and someone in this world who was like Light picked it up, then something like this could really happen. Well, mostly anyway. And if you're looking for what is basically a straight evolution of that idea, of this genre, hell, arguably a direct evolution of Death Note itself, you need look no further than Talentless Nana. This series has been undermarketed and undersold by other critics and its licensors, in part because its first episode disguises it as a My Hero Academia ripoff, until it does a Gakogurashi-style twist and reveals its true colors, but I, unlike those critics and marketeers, am not going to play up that twist, because, like Gakogurashi, it's much more interesting if I just, tell you what the story is about. Wow. Talentless Nana follows a young assassin, Hiragi Nana, who has been sent by the government to assassinate superheroes, the so-called talented, at a concentration camp disguised as a superhero school. Nana claims to be able to read minds, but in fact has no such power or any powers other than being trained in the arts of observation and murder. So, Talentless Nana presents us with the precise inverse of what Death Note offered. Instead of Light, who has a single fantastic power in the form of the Death Note, and must use that power in its limits to negotiate with the limits of reality in accomplishing his goals, Nana is an ordinary girl with ordinary powers who must use her normal human talents to exploit and circumvent the fantastic abilities of her opponents. And yes, I realize the words I used, and that the plot is quite literally our protagonist committing genocide in service of a fascist state. The story does address this, specifically around chapter 31 in the manga, and it does make pretty clear that, yeah, Nana is committing genocide in service of a fascist state that is lying to her. And she does realize this, and realize it's bad, and undergo some character development. The story does kind of feel it might be implicitly endorsing eugenics early on, and it's a bit uncomfortable because it doesn't clarify that that is or isn't what it is or is not doing, but ultimately it is not doing that. It could have done better to signpost that Nana is in the wrong earlier, but those are criticisms I'm saving for my full analysis. Relevant right now? No, it's not pro-eugenics, and yes, it's very good. Talentless Nana shares Death Note's fixation on details, objects, and logical consistencies, and its murder plots and mind games are about as engaging and thrilling in very much the same way. I first picked up the series to watch with a few friends as part of my election night coping strategy, and about 3 or 4 episodes in, I drunkenly proclaimed, "I haven't had this much fun since Death Note." I had a hell of a lot of fun watching the first half of Death Note for the first time. Not many shows have made me feel quite as excited and engaged as Talentless Nana has lately, and Talentless Nana, more so even than Moriarty, has managed to scratch that unique itch that until now it seemed only Death Note really could. This series is really onto something special. I did make the time to read ahead in the manga before writing this video up to chapter 40, and thus far I have been hooked. Nana is a terrific character, and the story has started to ask some tough moral questions, and in my opinion, the right questions for a story like Death Note to ask in this day and age. Whether or not it gives the right answers remains to be seen. In general, it's done a really terrific job of serving as both a great spiritual successor to Death Note and an engaging subversion of My Hero Academia and superhero fiction in general. The manga hasn't ended yet, but as far as I've read, it hasn't shown any signs of losing momentum, and I earnestly hope it plays its cards right and sticks the landing. I don't know where the anime is going to end up, but I have a sneaking suspicion it might end adapting chapter 28. And if I'm right, well, I really can't wait to see the reaction because, that was a lot. Chapter 28 is a lot, but it also might not end there because the pacing might not work out. We'll have to see. Either way, Talentless Nana is great, I adore it, and you should absolutely watch and or read it. I do plan on making a video about it, maybe soon, maybe only after the manga ends. I'll have to see how it shakes out. But anyway, yeah, Moriarty the Patriot and Talentless Nana. If you like Death Note, or if you liked the idea of Death Note but didn't like how it executed on it, both of these series come very, very much recommended. With that, I've been joyce-stick, and all the other things in this season that are good are Adachi and Shimamura, Assault Lily Bouquet, The New Love Life, and an honorable mention to Wandering Witch. Wandering Witch is a bit up and down. There's some mediocre stuff about it, some amazing stuff, but okay, that is a different video. Here is my Patreon credits. Maybe give me some money, but only if you have money, and only if you want more of this or that. Alrighty, bye-bye. And with thanks to Elf, Athiet, Awu, Cassandra, Eli Berg Moss, Fire Steel, Genevieve, Hikari no Yume, Misia, Nishwart, Scimitar, and Tis.